Welcome to Our Blue Bahamas, where we talk about the conservation of our Bahamian marine environment that sustains our way of life. I am your host, Crystal, and thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be exploring how the Bahamas can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals through environmental protection, climate action, and local community engagement while keeping our islands, like we always like to say, clean, green, and pristine. Today, my special guest in the studio is the Bahamas SDG, Sustainable Development Goals Ambassador Samantha Ramirez Rucklava.
Close enough.
I was trying so hard not to, but pronounce it for me.
Samantha Ramirez Ruvalcaba.
Yes.
Ruvalcaba.
Yes.
Difficult
wonderful.
last one.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having
here
me
on the show. And we're just gonna jump straight into it. And I wanted to ask you first, what do the Sustainable Development Goals? You know, it's something that it's now like a common part of, you know, environmental, what's the right word, like jargon, you know, everybody's using it, SDG. But what do they really mean, right? What are they? What do they mean for the Bahamas? And, you know, tell us a little bit about how you're raising awareness as a SDG ambassador.
Yeah, of course. So I'm glad to hear that you're saying that a lot of people are using SDGs in their everyday language. I do think that it's starting to get more popularized, but at the same time, especially here in the Bahamas, I think there's so much more outreach that needs to be done. So I guess this podcast serves as a perfect opportunity, and I'll start off by saying that the Sustainable Development Goals are an action plan. It was created by the United Nations. I'm not sure, you should be familiar with the United Nations, but for anyone who might be listening, the United Nations is an international organization, and they focus on identifying problems that humans are facing and creating solutions for them around the globe. Again, they're international, so they work with a bunch of different countries. I think, in fact, they have like 192 or 193 member states. And so they created this action plan called the Sustainable Development Goals back in 2015. And it's a 15-year action plan. And what these goals are meant to do is they're supposed to focus on problems that we're facing on a whole around the world and trying to create different solutions for different problems that we're facing. So it's a 15-year action plan. Deadline is 2030. And these 17 goals are all around the spectrum. We've got no hunger. We've got no poverty. We've got climate action. We've got a lot of different sectors that they focus in.
That generally basically is supposed to, I'm asking now, it's supposed to cover like basically all, you know, facets of your society.
Life,
so it's supposed to be like a holistic list of, you know, all of the different sectors of your country, of your nation that need improvement, correct?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, we tend to split it into three main categories. We've got the environmental pillar, very pertinent to what Brief does.
Exactly.
We've got the social pillar, anything that has to do with human interactions with each other. And then we've got our economic pillar, which is money transfers of any type. So yeah, we kind of switch it into those categories. And like you said, it is very holistic. No matter if you want to be an accountant, no matter if you want to be a marine biologist or a philanthropist, whatever it is that you want to do, you can incorporate these SDGs as well. Because again, we're trying to solve all problems that we're facing around the globe as humans.
Yes. And so like kind of like reeling it back into the local context. We know that you've been the ambassador for the last year, basically.
Yes.
So tell us what that experience has been like for you here in the Bahamas.
Yeah, so definitely been quite a journey. It has been just over a year. I think we started in, or actually May. Yeah, so it's been just a year, the anniversary of the ambassadorship.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. And we've done so many things. I'll start off by saying there's four of us. We've got the Sustainable Development Goals Youth Ambassadors and the Climate Change Youth Ambassadors. Climate change, they've been around for 3 or 4 years now, but SDGs, this is our first opening of the position.
Yes.
So it's been quite a journey to kind of explore what our limits are, what our boundaries are, how much we can do. But it's been a very rewarding experience. We've traveled to different high-level political forums, different conferences. We've organized or helped organize conferences. And we've also started quite a few of our own initiatives to help educate our Bahamian public on what the SDGs are and why they're so important to us.
Yeah. So and when you said that it was 3 years,
Yeah.
it's been the youth climate ambassadors have the position has existed
Yeah,
for 3 years, but every year it's renewed, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So and it's the same for SDG, but the SDG program, like that, position has only been there for
a year now.
For a year
So
now.
April last year would have been the first official opening of the SDGs.
Okay. And so, like, what is the like qualifiers? Not to go off topic, but what are the qualifiers for young people who are thinking about, hey, maybe I want to be a youth climate ambassador, maybe I want to be a SDG ambassador? What's the criteria?
Only criteria I think that you need to have, like, non-negotiable, is you have to be between 18 to 25 years old. That's the biggest thing, that you can't be younger, you can't be older. But for criteria revolving around your interests or revolving around who you are, what you've done so far, your personality maybe, there's really no limits. Again, especially for SDGs, there's 17 goals, and every single one of them focuses on a different problem. So no matter what your interest is as youth, whether you're in between 18 to 25, whether, again, you want to be into business or into talking about minorities or talking about racial inequalities, there's a goal out there for you, and each goal has its own little mini goals inside of it, or objectives, or targets, I think is what they're called, sorry. And so, again, there's no limits as to what your interests might be. They will align with one of the SDGs. So anything that you want to help out with the Bahamas, just reducing problems, yeah.
And when does it typically open? Like, when are those?
That's a great question. For us, the application period, I think it was February.
Okay,
I think
so
February was
it's
the
usually
deadline.
around. Okay.
But again, this.
So where can people go to
ambassadorship-
look out for it, to like learn more? Because there may be some listeners out there who want to be involved, or maybe it's like, oh, I want to do that.
And I hope so.
Like,
I really do hope so.
Where can they get like more information about this?
So they can go to sdg.gov.bs. I'm almost positive. And that's the Sustainable Development Goals Bahamian local page. So they work at the Office of the Prime Minister. They've got two sister units, the Climate Change and Environmental Advisory Unit and the SDG unit. Under that SDG unit, they've got that website. That's where we get employed as ambassadors. They've got their whole system of people that are working there to help us achieve the SDGs as well. So go to sdg.gov.bs. You can find applications there. You can find out more about our conferences, events that we're hosting, progress of the SDGs, all of that. Yeah.
Yes. And so should you also have the 17 SDGs memorized?
I do. It was honestly a journey to memorize them. You don't have to have them memorized.
Did you memorize it before?
No. Oh, heck no. That was a lot. It seemed like quite a feat. When I first came in, I remember I had my first meeting when we were at a little round table, or the oval table. And I remember they were like, okay, so what SDGs are you focused on? And I was so nervous. I was like, okay, 9, 12, 14, 9, 12, 14. Those are ones I want to focus on. And I was messing them up. I was like, what is 9? What was 12? What was 14? And now I have them memorized. But at that point, I told them, I'm so sorry. I really don't have them memorized. I just have to look them up really quickly. And they're like, that's okay. At the end of this journey, you'll probably have them memorized regardless, because you work with them so often and you have to advocate for them, right?
Yes.
So you have to know what you're talking about, especially as an ambassador. If you're trying to inspire other people to partake in this, you can't just tell them, oh, 9, 12, 14, that's me. You have to tell them about everything, because if you maximize the spectrum of what they can help out with, then you're going to maximize the amount of people that are going to be interested in it, right? So they're memorized now, but they were not at the beginning.
I'm having a flashback to my reporter days. It was like that for the ministers. When they call out, it changes after every election. And so you have to memorize the minister's name, their constituency, and their role, what they do. And so it's like after like the first year, because you keep talking about it all the time and writing about it, it's like, everybody, their positions, their names, their roles. It's just something that
sticks.
comes with practice. You know what I mean? Like practice makes. My choir director used to say, practice makes permanent, not perfect. Like, so you'll remember, right? So it'll stick. So that's the best thing about practicing. But back to the SDGs. So you mentioned SDG 9, but I want to talk a little bit about BRIEF and what BRIEF does. And BRIEF's conservation and education programs directly support the SDGs, right?
Yes.
We're also aligned with UN. Our programs under the Foundation for Environmental Education, like the Eco Schools program, the Young Reporters for the Environment program, those programs also align, right? And we support the SDGs, and especially in relation to marine life and coastal ecosystems, because that's where the focus of brief is. So we focus on like your SDGs. It's very ironic because
Mm-hmm.
we focus on SDG 12,
Mm-hmm.
right, which is responsible consumption. 14, life below water. Well, I said 12, 13, and 14, right?
Mm-hmm.
Climate action, and then 14, which is life below water,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we focus on those, and in the sense that, um, so for responsible consumption, for example, in our eco schools and young reporters for the environment, we encourage students to advocate
Mm-hmm.
for those, right? Young reporters, they're writing about it, similar to the SDG essay competition.
Yeah.
Students can write about what they see or do a video or something where they're talking about these, what do you call it, environmental issues that they feel are important to them. So they're
Mm-hmm.
raising awareness. And then also renewable, responsible consumption in the sense of renewable energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about renewable energy, and then you're also talking about, usually just broadly, this is like in a general sense, renewable energy, and then also talking about responsible consumption, like less plastics and
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, and toxic materials or harmful materials to the environment. So it's that, and then the life below water. That's kind of self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
Because all that we do advocate for the protection of our marine environment. That is our mission, right?
Mm-hmm.
At Brief, that's what we're all about. That's what we do, and then also climate action, which is huge because the climate change directly impacts all of the things that we're trying to protect at Brief, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our coral reefs, which always have a tough time in the summer recently, right?
Yeah.
With the coral bleaching because the world's, it's global warming, everything. CO2 emissions, causing the oceans to heat up and causing coral bleaching to happen, which directly impacts our fisheries,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the biodiversity of, of what's happening underwater. So we're all about that, and that also feeds into 14, right? They lead into each other.
Mm-hmm.
Life below water, which is, the conservation of our Bahamian marine environment.
And that's the best thing about the SDGs, honestly, that they're all so tied in with each other. You can't just abandon one of the SDGs and say, this is my only interest. They all tie in with each other.
They're very interconnected,
Yeah.
which I find very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you get pulled into something else and you're not, without even realizing
Yeah.
it, which is a good thing because
Yeah.
it forces you to think more,
Mm-hmm.
to think more holistically about
Yeah.
the issues that will affect us, because we're not thinking that, okay, well, yeah, climate change is what I'm focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great thing to focus on, but it's connected to almost every single thing
Mm-hmm.
in that, in the
Yeah.
list.
It provides you
right?
more perspectives too. It gives you
Yeah.
more ability to be able to relate to somebody else who has a different priority, and that way you can see what are they fighting for? Why are they fighting for that? And how can that relate to what's happening with me or what I want to focus on too?
Yeah.
So it really does make you more well-rounded.
So tell us a little bit, Samantha, about your focuses.
Okay.
Talk to you about like what Brief is usually, typically focused on, and
Yeah.
there are other SDGs that align with what we do too. Like we
Mhm.
said, many of them are interconnected. But from your end, what SDGs are you concerned with as the ambassador?
So as ambassador, when I first came in, and it really ties into what we were just talking about, when I first came in, I was purely climate change. I want to help out with our environment. I don't really care about the people behind it. I don't really care about our money. All I care about is our environment. And I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day where we were talking about how humans, we have a lot of impact on our environment, but our environment doesn't really adversely impact us the way that we're doing to our environment. So for me, it's like we've got selfish humans that do whatever they want for greed or for necessities or for development, and we're prioritizing that over trying to take care of the things that keep us alive. So when I first came in, it was purely environment, purely that. I don't really care about humans. But again, because I've been tied in and exposed so much to different SDG talks, I've become more aware of the fact that our economy and our society, they're very, very much tied in, and we can't leave those behind because they're the ones that keep us alive. Sustainable development isn't possible without having those two factors in as well. So I started off with 9, 12, and 14, which are industry, innovation, and infrastructure. That one was my priority or my favorite because I'm studying engineering. So trying to come up with different solutions that are already existing, but maybe more ecological, so that they don't harm our environments. For example, with coastal environments, we get a lot of hurricanes. We have a lot of coastal infrastructure that when hurricanes come in, or even the tides, erosion happens inevitably, and so it ends up adversely affecting our infrastructure. So creating more sustainable solutions for that infrastructure was really important and something that I wanted to focus on. Also, renewable energy kind of falls in there as well. Then my second one was SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. Honestly, we live in a world where we can create almost anything thanks to technology and scientists and our connectivity with technology as well, being able to get so many different ideas and products out so quickly because we're tied in with that technology. And while that's a really good thing for our development as a society, it's not so good for our environment because we're not really prioritizing that. We just want more trees, more water, more energy, more everything. Yeah. So responsible consumption, it's very, very widespread, whether it's genuine like human resources you need, or if it's financial resources you need and are using, or if it's natural resources you're using. All of these things that we need or we want, they're very dangerous if we keep on exploiting them without regarding or disregarding the impacts that they have on our environment, on our economy, and also on our society. So responsible consumption is one that I really wanted to focus on, especially here in the Bahamas, where our resources are very limited just because of how small we are. So we need to be very, very mindful of whatever it is that we're using, that we're not exploiting it, like you said, with overfishing, with our fisheries. We are having experiencing a lot of overfishing simply because our population is increasing. I mean, that's one thing by itself. So that was 12. And then the last one is 14, which you are extremely familiar with, life below water. And that's anything that has to do with our marine environment, anything that's underwater, that counts as SDG 14, and just taking care of that blue economy and not exploiting it. So those are the first three that I'm mostly focusing on with this platform.
Yeah. So it's... You said a lot of things.
I know.
No. But they're so really important, to everything that we've been doing. So I'm gonna roll back to the beginning when you were talking about virtually policy, right? Because your position is an ambassador,
yes.
Right? And so you're in that level of decision making, right? Where you're working from the office of the Prime Minister.
Yes, so they're set in there.
Yes, in the office. So from that angle, how is that interconnected with policy making as a youth? Like, what is your contributions to how decisions are made and coming up with ideas for solutions, like you previously talked about?
I wish I could say it was more. It was a lot more than it actually is. But I will say, again, going back to policies and economics and politics as a whole, it was definitely not an interest of mine. I came into this ambassadorship kind of thinking that it was going to be more grassroots and that we would maybe have more room to create ideas and just have them implemented. Yeah. But that's not the case. And it's not at fault for the ambassadorship. It's just not how we work as a society. And that was crazy to find out. But for how we're partaking or helping out with policy making, it's more so at these conferences that we learn so much about the proper jargon, the proper ways that things function, how to get people acting, how to get people interested in your causes, so that, of course, if there's more noise, there's going to be more possibility for action. Yeah. So it's all about getting that education, raising awareness, getting a group of people to want to sign on to help on to fulfill these projects that are really necessary.
Yeah,
like protecting coral reefs.
And I think that's super important, especially where, like you said, it may not. So there are several ways to skin a cat, as they say, right? So it's like there are avenues, like you said, with the conferences that you go to and the various workshops, and you said that you've traveled on this ambassadorship. So while it's not like directly influencing. Directly,
like we're not drafting them
directly, for influencing policy per se. There's still an avenue of change making that you can pursue where you are connected now and networking with organizations that are making a change, with organizations that are, working to make a difference, and subscribing to the SDGs and contributing to them. So that is the avenue that you can take, going into that, because there are a lot of organizations locally that deal with all of the issues that we're talking about, especially environmental issues. There are so many, right? And I hope to see the sector grow in the future, especially with the need, right? We're seeing all the things happening to our environment now. Sustainable development should be top priority, right? So that we know how important that is. Also, you said that you're doing engineering.
Yes.
I love the Fem and STEM. Okay. Shout out to all our Fem and STEM, our engineering girlies, and, works girlies, infrastructure girlies, and science girlies. But yeah, the connection, right, with engineering and climate change is not usually, because you said that your focus when you came into this role was climate change, right? And then you said that, you're doing engineering.
Yeah.
So people usually don't make the connection, and they don't realize how vast environmental advocacy, right, or interests can be in a career, right? People think, oh, what you want to do, be a science teacher? Like, that's it. It's not it. Or be an environmentalist. No, it's more than that. You can do so much. You talk about works, you talk about infrastructure, you talk about plumbing, you talk about electricity, you talk about law, environmental law. And so there are a lot of avenues too. So I want people who are listening, right, our audience, to really open up your mind, students, parents, teachers, about how far this environmental advocacy and education and networking can go for youth, right? There is so many, like it, and I said it before, it should really be the foundation of of modern education, really, right? Because everything is tied to the environment.
It's almost like your morals, you need to have that moral standpoint of what is sustainable development and how can I implement that? Like how you get taught responsibility, honesty, integrity, all of those things. You should be taught about sustainable development too, because again, like you said, it's a foundation for how you should be working in the future. It's not, oh, I work like this, I make my money, I support myself, now I can probably help some other people out, or how can I help the environment out?
But there's a lot of things to consider, right? When you have to, so for those who may still be in doubt listening to our conversation, step outside this summer. Step outside. It's going to impact people who may be vending outside, right? It's going to affect our summer festivals. It's going to, and culture, and you know what I mean, and all of that. And people are going on boats and traveling and going on trips. The environment and climate change is impacting all of that, right? It's going to have an impact on the car you're driving right now, right? So it's going to have an impact on all those things. So we need to be thinking more holistically about the environment and conservation.
And you don't even have to go externally. Just think about yourself. Your mental and your physical health are going to be severely impacted by a lack of sustainable development, because you mentioned engineering and sustainable development or climate change, how they're not really correlated with each other. It's either prioritize one or prioritize the other one.
And usually, the connotation with like engineering is very
polluting,
technical and technological. So it's just like, oh, it's the pollution, the polluters, right?
Yeah, because construction is a really big thing in engineering, and they are extremely high polluters, especially for like on a global scale. And we have a lot of construction that's necessary for the development of anything at all. And so one thing, or a story, I guess, that I don't really talk about much, but I started off at the University of Toronto back in 2021, and I was studying civil engineering. So that's mostly focusing on creating buildings, creating roads, bridges, all of that. And when I went over there, coming from the Bahamas and then going to downtown Toronto was the biggest change ever, because here you look up, you look around, there's colors everywhere, whether there's flowers, trees, the sky, the ocean, even our infrastructure, like it's got bright colors, right? and pastels and really beautiful colors. But going over there, you look up and you see skyscrapers all around. You can barely see the sky. And if you see the sky, it's gray.
Yeah.
And then you just see people walking, everybody in a rush, everybody doing their own thing. Nobody's familiar. Like here, you walk into a room and you say, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is. Over there, you say something. And you probably know a
couple people in that room, too.
Yeah, exactly. But over there, you go, you say good afternoon, and they look at you weird. They're like, why are you talking to me? Like, what do you need or what do you want? Yeah. And that takes a toll on your mental health as well. And so making that change of seeing how there's no green spaces over there. And this isn't a hate towards them and towards Toronto, but it's just a really big change. And there's studies that prove that if you go to a place where there's very few green spaces, it takes a toll on your mental health. And it's proven. And so making that change of realizing that civil engineering is great. I love anything that has to do with like architecture and creating and load bearings and calculating things so that we can see how strong a building will be and withstanding wind loads and heat loads and everything. And I know it might sound boring to other people, but to me, I like that. It's interesting to me. And I love doing those calculations, but making that sacrifice of knowing that if I continue down this road, we're just going to have more buildings and more pollution. And that's where raising awareness comes back in, because if you're a sector or an entity that doesn't know about sustainable development, how are you going to contribute if you don't even know that there's a table that has those things, right? So again, raising awareness and education is so important. And we've spoken about youth education, which is a big thing that we advocate for, especially as youth ambassadors. But we're also outreaching to different adult businesses or organizations. For example, the BCA, Bahamas Contractors Association. We're hoping to go with the engineers, the Bahamas Society of Engineers sometime in August, I think, or October, can't remember. And we also want to go with the architects. We want to go to these groups of people because it is also intergenerational, right?
Yes.
We can't just leave it to the youth and say, yes, you can do this. All the conferences, they literally go, yes, youth, you guys have the new ideas and the new perspective. And I'm like, yes, great. But how is youth going to help us out if they have zero experience? They don't know what the system exists like right now. So getting those people that are already in their jobs, who already have businesses, getting them involved as well and understanding of why this process is so important, of integrating sustainable development into whatever it is that they do, is also really important.
Yes, we definitely need to get more voices in the conversation from different backgrounds, because sometimes like there's a disconnect, you know what I mean? And that weakens the whole program, right? Of whatever, or project, whatever initiative we're trying to do. And we have people who should be, you know, talking about this, and it helps to avoid mistakes. It helps to come up with a clear goal and a clear plan that would probably work best, right? Because we're looking for the best outcome for our country and for our people. And we want something that's sustainable, right? It's sustainable development goals. You cannot have anything that is sustainable if you do not start off with where you are. You have to meet people where they are. You have to meet the country and the system and whatever it is, where it is, and then build on that and move forward. You can't do that if you're just bringing in people who have no clue of the context, right? And so this is where youth and senior people and those in the middle, you know, who still working their way up, all need to get together and collaborate on these things. Because yes, we love the youth, we want to empower them, but it has to be us who really encourage them. And I'm gonna plug the Coral Reef Sculpture Garden here, because the artists behind the Coral Reef Sculpture Garden, Willis E. Times, the brainchild, and then also with other artists as well, Jason Nicaris Taylor and Andre John, like they all contributed to that. But the sculpture by Willis E. Times, which is Virtuoso Man, holds a torch and is passing a mantle to the large sculpture, which is the largest sculpture in the world, the Ocean Atlas, who's 18 feet tall and about 60 tons. She's huge. And he's passing the baton, because he's the senior generation, he's the older generation, passing the environmental sustainability torch to the younger generation. And that is that's the motion we need to be making. We need to make things sustainable. We can't skip generations. We need to make sure that the older are teaching the younger, and we're all on board together. and working toward a better goal for our country. And it's going to take some compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't like to have nuance. A lot of times we could tend to be very idealistic,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns off a lot of people and it creates enemies. But we need to find a way, like I said, to find a middle ground and to see how best we can actually move forward and do things, like take action.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really wonderful. We're out of time. Samantha, any final remarks?
Not really, just to include sustainability no matter what you do in your life. Again, it's not even just about your future career. You can do things in your daily life as well, whether it's banning single-use plastics from your life or being more conscious of your energy consumption, your water consumption, your materials consumption, not buying all of those, not contributing to mass consumerism and just buying things because, oh, it looks pretty. I mean, don't limit yourself completely. Sure, get those luxuries, but yeah, no, me too. But also just be more conscious. Do you really need that thing, or are you just gonna get that to lose it a week later? Just being more conscious of every decision that you make.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Samantha, for joining us, the Bahamas Youth Climate Ambassador. And thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. It's been wonderful. Join us next week, same time, same place, and follow us on social media at breef.org, BREEF.org or BREEF242. Follow us and stay connected.